All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another LexisNexis webinar. And today's webinar is going to be titled Legal Landscape in 2024, Insights, Ideas, and Inspiration. So I am Samantha from LexisNexis, and today we're going to be showing you a bit on our newest platform, Lexis Plus Hong Kong, which is an upgraded platform and interface to increase our precision in your legal research as well as drafting. So right, what you can see on the screen is our upgraded interface for our legal research, as well as our practical guidance, which is our drafting platform, and we're going to be going through this today through a short demo. And one of the newest additions on our platform would definitely be the increase of AI technology and AI tools on our platform. So first of all, you can actually see that we have included what we call Lexis Answers on our platform. So our platform is able to interpret full queries, such as what I've typed on the screen right now. If I type something like, what is adverse possession? Our platform will be able to return us with the results and highlight certain answers, which are all from citable authorities. So from these answers, you will actually be able to, from the next step, if you prefer reading full judgments, be able to find where these extracts have been extracted from each of these citable authorities, such as the Hong Kong judgments that we have available on our platform. Next up, another AI technology we have included is what we call our search tree. So through the original algorithm, we are actually able to move away from what we used to call terms and connectors and upgrade to a newer platform where you will be able to conduct any of your legal research terms using the use of search tree and, for example, add any proximity connectors through just a few clicks, as well as look at the relationship between each of your search terms and how any of the legal terminology has been interpreted and how this shows up in your search results as well. So through using a search tree, this will actually help you largely save down on the time that is needed to enter the search terms into each of your legal research searches whenever you're conducting any search, whether it's within our primary materials, in our cases, or whether it's in our secondary materials. Next, we also have a new technology, which is a GPT-powered case target tool. And as we saw just now, sometimes we have over 2,000 results when we're searching for certain search terms. And what we want to help you do is to help you find the one good case or the cases that are more relevant to what you're actually searching for. So through Case Target, we're actually able to, again, save down on time by the AI tool helping us consolidate and help us distill the most relevant cases. And these are all based on the co-citation as well as the judicial treatment as some of the information that goes through back end to tell you which of the cases are the most authoritative or sometimes even the most landmark cases in relation to your search as well. And then moving on to our practical guidance, which is our legal drafting side, not only have we comprised of all of the different jurisdictions that we have over here on Lexis Plus Hong Kong, so most of these would be the common law or Commonwealth jurisdictions available, we have included all of the different practical guidances where you can now, on one page, view all of the different jurisdictions that you're subscribed to, and also the practical guidance on the same platform without having to switch from one platform to another. So on Lexis Plus Hong Kong, we actually have the four main tools that we have available, and you'll be able to switch from platform to platform just on the same login in Lexis Plus Hong Kong. Apart from just the practical and international practical guidance, we also have different practical guides available where you can, whether when you're doing any of the cross-border transactions, you're going to be able to view some of the practice notes for doing business in different jurisdictions around the world all at once. And all of these practice notes will be telling you the newest laws and all the specific legislation that you may have to know in relation to each of these jurisdictions, with the guidance and practice notes along with this as well. So this is the whole upgraded Lexis Plus platform. And if you're interested, please do feel free to reach out to us. And so today we're going to be moving back to the webinar, which will be moderated by Ms. Corinne Wong, which is the founding partner of Shum, Wong & Co. Solicitors. And just before we start, we just have a few housekeeping matters. So the first one would be that this webinar will be recorded, and this recording will be sent to all of our registrants after the webinar. There will also be a time allocated at the end of the panel for any questions. So please do feel free to submit any questions you have through the Q&A box, which you should be able to see on the bottom of the screen. And the panelists will try to answer your questions, as many as possible, towards the end of the webinar. So without further ado, I'll be passing this on to Corinne. So over to you.
Thank you, Samantha. Welcome, everyone. While many practitioners might have met me before in my other public services or professional standards related work role, today I'm very pleased to host my first time for a webinar for LIXIS, and in my capacity as the founding partner of my own law firm. I started my own law firm in the year 2009, so the year 2024 means a lot to me, because that means that I'm welcoming the 15th year of my firm, which I founded myself personally. Today, we are very pleased to have a few speakers with us, and I shall invite them in turn to share on a few questions. Today, our seminar is about looking forward to the legal landscape in the year 2024, where our speakers will share their insights, ideas, and inspirations. So let us start by asking the first question, and then I'll ask my speakers to introduce themselves and probably respond to my first question. So let us first discuss what does legal technology mean to you, and how do you use it? So today, I have Brian Tang, who is the founding executive director, Law Innovation Technology and Entrepreneurship Lab, we call it LITE Lab, at the University of Hong Kong Faculty of Law. So can I first invite Brian to share with us on this question, and then I'll ask the other speakers, David and Christy, to share. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the kind introduction, Corinne. So my name's Brian. Maybe by way of brief background so that you know where I'm situated. So I used to be in private practice in a large law in Australia and then New York. And then I was in-house in Hong Kong at an investment bank before I left to go into entrepreneurship in terms of fintech, regtech, and law tech. And now I help found LITE Lab, Law, Innovation, Technology, Entrepreneurship at Hong Kong U. So maybe with that as background, for me, what legal tech is reflected in what I've created with LITE Lab. So I call it the law of technology. What we do is the law of technology, law of ABCD, AI, blockchain, cloud, and data. So how do we, as lawyers, understand the new technology that comes about? But maybe more relevantly in this context is the technology of law. So how do we apply law technology to the delivery of legal services? Again, if we were to distance ourselves from the privileged space of being a profession, it's legal services, and that could be by licensed lawyers or people who are otherwise affiliated, aligned in relation to the space. And that could be also for access to justice. So it's not just in relation to making, how does Richard Susskind call it, millionaires around the table even richer, but actually allowing for lay people to understand what their rights and obligations are under our system, right, for justice. So linked to that, how I use law. So I have another capacity, which I am the co-chair of ALITA, the Asia Pacific Legal Innovation and Technology Association, which is Singapore-based, but it's pan-regional. And there, how does technology impact and be used by the profession? And the profession normally is understood as being my camera doesn't want to work. So I'll talk while I keep going. The profession could be legal practitioners in a law firm, but it could also be in-house. It could also be a barrister. It could also be a judge. It could also be the Justice Department. And it could so there are lots of practitioners, shall we say, in this space. But and linked to that, so that is how do so I started my journey sometimes with oh, there we go, private law firms, and we can talk more about that. But more specifically, because I spent time in-house and I was on the executive committee of ACC, as it now is, the in-house perspective. So I'll speak a little bit about that. But how do they become more efficient in terms of how they work, as they need to do more with less? But interestingly, at least for me, because I now am at a law school and I use technology for a law school, it borderlines on edtech, education technology, right? So how do we then train the next generation of lawyers to be more akin and familiar with these technologies, because this is how their profession is going to evolve. And also, by the same token, how can we use these technologies to be more efficient in the space that I'm in an academic environment? So I joke that I'm in 3 industries: law, education, and finance, and at least 2 are existential. So I'll pause there because yeah, law tech means a lot because I spend a lot of time in that space, but as do my fellow panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. So next, may I invite Christy Ng. She is the legal technologist, researcher, and advisor. She has previously worked in banks, law firms, and D2 legal technology. So Christy, what does legal technology mean to you, and how do you use it? Our audience would love to hear from you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Corinne. So yeah, I did just briefly, I did work on chatbots at HSBC, exploring the uses of it in the in-house legal teams, and I wrote about AI in the legal profession. Both of it is published in Wiley and Cambridge University Press. So if you're interested, you can check those out. My work cradles between the business as usual BAU work in derivatives and also innovation projects like digital transformation projects of documentation. So back to the question. So what does law tech mean for me? To me, it means responsible and ethical use of technological breakthroughs to improve the ways that we work and the clients that we serve. So that actually means playing a key decision-making role on when to push the limits of what is conceivable for technology, and practical applications of incremental innovations that we can actually do now. So I find that a lot of lawyers and technologists tend to focus on developing a broad but not deep understanding of the AI's techniques that are in the news that dominate the PR machine. So like generative AI, ChatGPT, Gemini, you name it. And that's fine. That's one way to nurture your journey into legal tech. But in reality, I think that we have to remember, in order to get to feasible use cases for these types of disruptive technologies in our day-to-day, without disrupting our roles in this profession, without making us obsolete in an ethical manner, we have to start with the basics of challenging how we traditionally approach the practice of law. And one way of doing this is by incorporating design thinking elements to legal processes and legal problem solving. So we can talk more about what design thinking is later, and how this can help technology-shaped, T-shaped lawyers differentiate themselves and add value. But what it comes down to, in terms of what law tech means to me, is it entails thinking clearly about your skill set and where your interests lie to determine what your place is going to be in this new legal pecking order. Are you going to be an expert consumer of law tech, or are you going to be an expert producer? And I'm sure we're going to get into more of that later on in the webinar.
Thank you, Christy. So next, we have David Cameron. David is the principal of David Cameron Law Office. So David, so what does legal technology mean to you, and how do you use it?
Thank you, Corinne. And I'm not to be confused with the other David Cameron, of course. And I'd like to start off by saying congratulations on 15 years. That's really remarkable. I'm at year 3, so hopefully in 12 years' time, I will have caught up to you, but then you'll of course be ahead of me. I think it's interesting already what Brian and Christy said in terms of legal tech. And do you think of legal tech the same as you do as fintech? And I'm here probably for a different reason, a different perspective. And that's why you have panelists, right? So I started my own law firm 3 years ago. I spent 12 years in big law all here in Hong Kong. So I had the very unique opportunity of deciding what works and what doesn't, and how do I be successful as a law firm moving forward. So in the technology space, I don't necessarily think of it as legal tech. I think of it as what was relevant to me in starting a practice and being successful in that practice. There are 2 broad categories in that sense. One is business operations, and the second is business model. So from business operations perspective, just very simply, I don't have any non-legal staff. So if you could see behind the virtual background, I have a beautiful office, but it's just me. And the reason for that is technology. So my accounting software is linked to my invoicing software, is linked to my banking software. I mean, my bank accounts, it all reconciles. Multiply that a dozen times over all the operational needs, and it's just a click away. And it's just fantastic, fascinating how we've all evolved. My mind wanders to COVID. I hate COVID. It was a horrible time, but we did all learn how productive you could be, one individual with one device and access to technology. Second point on my business model. So there are a lot of different things about my business model. One notable aspect is I don't do billable hour. I only do fixed fee. What that means for me is if I have 10 hours in a day, I don't get paid for those 10 hours. I get paid for how much I can produce in those 10 hours. So I really want to adopt technology. Any space I can find efficiencies, that's what I want. So I'm out there. I'm open to any sort of technology that makes my product and services better. And as a result, compared to other firms where time is a resource, at my firm, and I'll tie this into tech, my firm, time is a constraint. So I want to do as much as possible with a limited amount of time. Not to say I'm a trendsetter, but I think could be considered a microcosm for the broader legal industry, because 2 reasons. 1, I'm highly incentivized to adopt technology. And 2, I can do that very quickly if I want to, if I find good technology out there. So I think that's why I'm here, to share my thoughts in that context, and I'll stop there.
Thank you, David. Indeed, I'm amazed to hear that you do need any non-professional staff, and technology has been helping out a lot. Yes, certainly we can continue the dialogue on that. But I have been entrusted with a few interesting questions that we want you as speakers to share with the audience. So let us continue with the next question that I guess our audience would love to hear. So based on what you have shared just now, my 3 speakers, so what immediate impact have you noticed as a result of the introduction of AI-powered solutions for lawyers over the past year or so? So shall I start with David first this time? We take turns to answer first.
So I guess I guess coming back to the billable hour, I think technology is going to put a real strain on that model. So I don't want to pick on the billable hour, but just to walk through the audience together how this logically progresses. And if you start with the counter argument, so okay, technology has always been introduced at different stages, right? Past decades or whatever. We've gone from the typewriter to the computer. We've gone from searching the case law books to LexisNexis. Just to give you a shout out there, that would have taken me 10 hours, what the demo was in 5 minutes. But my thought is that up until now, that technology has made us, as in humans or lawyers, human lawyer is not an oxymoron. They made us better lawyers, right? They made us more efficient, they made us faster, but we might be at an inflection point where the technology is not making us better, but it's starting to replace us. So I'm sorry to say to any junior lawyer, 1st year, 2nd year, 3rd year, 4th year, ChatGPT can put out a better first draft than you can, right? So you think this through in terms of how the legal industry is going to develop. There are 4 possible outcomes. One is law firms don't adopt technology. That sounds a little bit unusual, especially to me, because I love technology, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. There are a lot of people who are very happy with the current status quo. And just as an aside, a lot of smart people have said this to me, and I agree that change is going to come from the client side. It's going to be client demand. And maybe, Brian, you're shaking your head. You can talk to this in terms of the in-house side, right? So not adopt technology. I don't think that works because others are going to adopt technology and outdo you. Number 2 is you could find a way to adopt technology, but spend the same amount of time on it because you have to, because it's the billable hour. Maybe layers and layers of review on what ChatGPT produces. I don't think that really works, and the clients won't like that. Number 3 and number 4, go to volume, and 3 is volume and 4 is rates. So you could say, okay, it used to take us 10 hours. Now it takes us 1 hour. Now we need to do 10 times the amount of that product. We don't want to go there as a legal industry because that's a race to the bottom where we're chasing volume and quality goes to the gutters. Number 4 is rates. So I just read that Kirkland's top rate now is $2,500 an hour for their top lawyer. So you could say, okay, this used to take us 10 hours, and now because of technology, it takes us 1 hour. We used to charge $1,000 per hour for 10 hours, so $10,000. Now we can do it in an hour, so we're just going to increase our rates to $10,000. Take that to the extreme and contrast 2 meetings. Meeting A, where you advise for an hour and you end up saving the client millions of dollars, and you charge $10,000 because that's now your rate, versus meeting B, where you just need to sit there because they need counsel present. And you just need to be there in case, and you don't add any value, but you're still charging $10,000. That's where you get into where we may be going as a legal industry in terms of value pricing. Because the problem is an hour, and technology is going to make everything faster and easier and better. And we as a professional body need to think about where are we contributing value, and that's what we should be paid for.
Thank you, David. Yes, indeed. We've been long time charging based on the hourly rates, but you know, clients are having much expectation as to the certainty of fee. So I guess be having a fixed fee and how the technology is helping out in this regard certainly is something for us to continue to deliberate. Yes. Okay, so just now David said Brian has been nodding his head or shaking his head. I can't recall. So Brian, what do you have to say on this?
Great, thanks. It was nodding, it wasn't shaking. So I do agree a lot with what David said. I was really pleased to meet with him actually because of this little panel, because I've actually met with quite a few solo type practitioners in Singapore. COVID actually gave rise to that, the rise of virtual firms that have been possible, working out of co-working spaces, working out of home even, right? As long as they have a separate registered address and a place to meet. So I think the question here is how might this evolve, especially from a client expectation? So ultimately, especially with the law firm, it's the client, right? And so how I would put this is as follows. So our journey was such that within law schools that have introduced legal technology, the ones that started in North America have started using legal tech with NGO, so they call that access to justice, and so they worked on co-design projects. And interestingly, you know, what was mentioned by Christy, I actually teach both legal design thinking as well as business model canvas in my class. So in one of my classes actually called, you know, business models. So I think this is critical for lawyers to actually understand. But we've worked on access to justice projects, and we were lucky enough to win some awards, including in Georgetown. But then our innovation was to actually work with in-houses. So in-houses, as you know, have to work with more, do more with less, right? And often that's where technology works. The same way that David says, hey, how can he do more with less resources and especially headcount, right? So they were very conducive to using, so our innovations to use no-code, low-code tools and to actually create jointly co-design Initially, it was workflow projects, right? So how do you create things that make things more efficient for the lawyers in-house? And we're able to win some awards, including through clock. So the concept of legal operations is quite big in North America and in Europe, and slowly but surely kind of gaining some steam here in Asia, and we're helping to grow with that as well. But fast forward, we are now in the first anniversary only of what I call prompt-generated synthetic data, which is ChatGPT, right? It was launched in November 30th. And so through that, what we've started doing is actually working more with in-houses in relation to some of those initiatives. We've had students kind of so to take a step back, as many of you know, especially from Hong Kong, we are geo-locked. We don't get access to ChatGPT because they locked us. And it was a big debate at universities where a lot of the universities in Hong Kong famously banned ChatGPT. But part of it was an access issue. Is it fair if David has access through his VPN, but Christy does not, right? From a grading point of view. So, but they did allow professors to introduce into their courses. So we're one of the first, actually, I made it mandatory for my class to use it for the various reasons that David mentioned. How do we train the next generation? And so our students have worked with in-house counsel on various projects. I had the good fortune of actually being invited by a large conglomerate, Asian conglomerate, over to Bangkok a couple of weeks ago to do a workshop for their 80 lawyers across the region on how to use it. So there are those that know how to use it, but it may or may not surprise the audience that many are still pretty much early in their journey. So the thing is, what can they do with it? And once they open their eyes to it, how do they apply it to their workflow process? I think Richard Susskind a few days ago actually published something at the Times, and the title was "Forget the Firms. We should be asking what legal AI means for clients." And I think that's right. So, and I think it's linked to what has been said earlier by David. If the client can now can realize what Gen AI can do, if it can summarize things, we saw what LexisNexis Plus can do, right? Now firms are creating their own LLMs, initially for internal purposes, but now with open source projects like Llama and Mistral, one can create their own LLMs with their own dedicated databases and RAGs, right? So from that point of view, I think as more law, the clients, I think, are increasingly aware of what is possible. And once they realize what is possible, then comes the question, what do we outsource, right? Or what can we do internally, number one. Number two, previously, if I sent something outside to review some law or review some documents, and it took a certain amount of time, but now I know if I ingest it, it takes, previously it took maybe 2 days, and now maybe it takes half an hour to do if I do it internally, or even if I know it can be done in half an hour. Am I willing to pay for 2 days worth of work from the external source to do that, right? So I think as the client becomes more familiar with what is possible with the technology, the client will then adjust what its expectations are and the pricing requirements are as well. Now, I'm far from a technology solutionist. There are hallucinations, there are certain limitations, of course, in relation to what can be done with these tools. But if you appreciate what it's good at and what it's not, I think increasingly the clients are getting more sophisticated in terms of what can be done. It's still early days. We're still in the first year, right? And only now, let's just say it's been good money for Microsoft, where increasingly the clients are now taking it on board with GPT-4 and dedicated enterprise. So it actually addresses some of the IP type issues and some of the data privacy type issues. But as they do that, query the nature of the relationship that clients will have with the outside lawyers. I still do believe that there is a role for outside lawyers, and an important one. But I think that, as David said, one has to be cleverer about how one positions oneself in that space. I'll just pause there. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Yes, indeed. Ultimately, as a service provider, we provide service to the clients. So the question to ask is, what do our clients need and how do we serve them and how to serve them better? Exactly. This is the question, a perpetual one, actually. It's just that the change of technology, the improvement, the enhancement, everything. So next, can I invite Christy to share with us what do you think as a result of these AI-powered solutions? What do you think are the impacts? Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Corinne. Yeah, so I can only speak from the banking and finance industry because that's the industry I'm in, specifically derivatives and structured products. So what I'm seeing amongst the major market participants is that the reality on the ground is that a lot of manual solutions actually just work fine. They work fine, and the appetite to explore different ways of working sometimes is quite low, especially nowadays with the environment being the way it is. And that's also because lawyers don't have the time to balance firefighting the business as usual problems with piloting new vendor solutions. So even if you sell it as something with a worthwhile ROI to the business, I mean, the appetite is a bit low right now. And we all pay lip service to increasing efficiency. So we're all interested in efficiency gains, working smarter, not harder, automating what we can, turnaround times shortening. And there are market players using AI-powered tools to help with this. So with basic document review, natural language processing tools like chatbots, in-house developed, and digital transformation projects. So this is largely in the first wave of AI implementation in the legal profession, which I talk about in the textbook, Cambridge textbook. And we're largely in this stage in North Asia. So I do see some market players moving on to the second stage, which has to do with structuring legal data. So even though generative AI, and there's lots of AI techniques that don't need to work with structured data, structuring data and structuring legal data and legal drafting to be machine readable for downstream users is important, and I'll get a bit into this later. But different market participants are at varying stages of sophistication with recognizing the importance of their data. And I'm seeing that smaller market participants some of them have on their agenda to map out a comprehensive data usage and AI adoption strategy. And they're actually in a better position than some of the other market participants whose leaders take on a more dismissive view of the importance of the secondary uses of proprietary data. So the challenge for lawyers is to and there are lawyers working on this now, craft a data usage and AI adoption strategy that adheres to data protection principles, safe storage, privacy, and simultaneously not stifling innovation and tech adoption at their organizations. And there is increasing awareness on a general whole in this space on the importance of data optimization and how it can drive business objectives. So either preemptive measures like spotting irregularities in risk reporting and other risks, or proactive measures like forecasting revenues for the incoming financial quarter based on emerging trends in the existing data and projected deal activity. And so in terms of data strategy, everyone in a way has been, to some extent, has been waiting for the EU AI Act and the Chinese AI Act to come out, and it came out not long ago. It affects more so the open source LLMs and less so the foundational models developed by private enterprise. So that is a welcome development to some extent. And I'm seeing in some the leaders at some market participants that they're usually taking nowadays they're taking a wait and see approach with conservatism in terms of the types of tools that they're onboarding. Some of them they just don't feel it's necessary. It's more of a burden than it's worth. But where I'm seeing unbridled enthusiasm is exploring deals in the Web3 economy. So increasing tokenization of traditional asset classes like e-bonds, pushing out crypto products for the brokerages, ESG products like green e-bonds, which actually the Hong Kong government has done as well. So that's a space that is very hot right now.
Thank you, Christy. So Christy has raised important points, such as how we are treating the data protection, the concerns on data storage, also on the data optimization, etc., and the recent developments in other jurisdictions are something that we all should continue to look at them. So now, let us look at another question. So we have been talking about clients and how we are trying to adapt to the change in the markets and the expectations. So precisely, can I ask my speakers to share with us more? How do you think our clients' expectations actually evolving? This time I open up to anyone to start first.
I'm happy to chime in there.
Excellent, thank you, Brian.
So I started about how the expectations are evolving already in relation from the in-house point of view, but maybe let me try to solidify it. I actually run a couple of roundtables. One is for in-house lawyers. So we actually on the back of some of our projects. So when we first launched LITE Lab, the idea was to address what Christy had mentioned, the low interest level of lawyers say, look, I'm busy enough with BAU, don't disturb me and stuff, and I don't know this. You're asking me to understand my data and structured and unstructured, what the heck, right? I just know I filed this thing in my inbox here, and maybe when I need to find something and all this kind of stuff, right? So our theory of change was actually to have law students work with the in-house lawyers. So the in-house lawyers think that they're doing a favor for the law students, and they kind of are, right? But the law students are then actually the ones that are creating the no-code, low-code tools for them. And we use off the shelf. So one of the things we've learned, I had a couple of students work on a great project which had 130 variables, right? But the in-house did not ultimately adopt it because they needed to buy the license to actually use it and approval processes, et cetera, et cetera. So we doubled down, frankly, on Power Automate. And the Power Platform, Microsoft, because everybody has Microsoft, right? So I think in the first year, the students, I said, look, in the worst case scenario, the students who have created something, it's not so great. Remember, we're not Accenture, we're not creating something for the in-houses, but the students would have learned something. The in-houses would have been part of their digital journey, which is all great. In the better case scenario, they would have created a proof of concept, which maybe they can show the CFO or the GC to say, hey, now can we get funding and dedication because, hey, this really works, right? To Christy's point, so that they can actually see what is possible with the technologies. But in our first year, our students, we were told by the GC for North Pacific for FedEx that guess what? It's an implementation. Our lawyers across the five countries actually using this tool, which allows for legal triage. So it's totally doable. So we've actually worked with HSBC, for example, and the great thing is we actually work with their legal operations department, not with the lawyers per se. So the operations teams, sometimes they introduce the innovation team. So that's another way to actually get the lawyers to be a part of that journey. Our initiative, our roundtable right now also has companies like Jardines or McKinsey, and some of the big banks as well. So the idea is to actually grow that ecosystem so that in-houses. So the interesting thing that we're finding, and this is linked to the question about what clients' expectation are. So Clock, for those who are familiar with it, was actually started on the West Coast. They were created by the legal. So as a tech company, you know, digitization can solve a lot, right? So then that's what we do for our clients. So why don't we do it internally? So they created legal operations teams and companies like Google and Intel, and they to make the legal operations more efficient. Because as many of you would know, some of the in-houses departments in the US are larger than many law firms, right? So how do we make that more efficient? And we transform that over. So here in Hong Kong, some of the folk in our roundtable are our own unicorns like Klook and the like, who are actually because they're tech first, they actually have legal operations people. And so those are the ones that are actually helping to make those more efficient. So again, fast forward to the question, as those companies become more efficient as to what they do internally for legal operations, then what do they outsource, right? So I think so there is now it is a journey. There are some companies that are very much more traditional, and so that they are going through that journey. But I think especially for the smaller departments here that have one or two much smaller groups, they can find the technology can be more efficient and make them much more efficient. And then I think that then leads into the provocation of David, which is, if you're a law student right now, would you be kind of worried? What profession are you entering into, right? How many jobs are there going to be, right? And so to me, and that's part of my mini mission at the law school, is to actually equip those students to understand the technology, to be willing to talk about all the stuff that Christy was talking about. She's talking about data. How many lawyers would understand data, to be honest, right? Okay, some of them may be data privacy lawyers, right, and data protection lawyers, but do they understand about data lakes and data silos and how to actually differentiate, structured versus unstructured data, right? So that they can actually gather that data to train the foundational models, right? So these are things I think we need to train the next generation of lawyers, and as they become more familiar with that, then they can perhaps and hopefully serve our clients ultimately best, whether they're internal clients or external clients or society in general.
Thank you, Brian. So David, Christy, anything?
I'll be brief. I'm sure Christy has more insightful things to say on this than I do. So in terms of tying it all together, in terms of client expectations, and what Brian said really resonates with me in terms of the future lawyers. So client expectations in the context of technology, two things: one general, the second one specific. The general thing is, and just to be frank about it, when my clients come to me, they don't care how I get things done internally, right? But they're used to a certain product, a certain service, at a level of quality and a certain price. And as I become more efficient and better at what I do because I use technology, that becomes the expectation of the client and the market. And then that's how it kind of moves. So that's just generally just to say my thoughts on that. Secondly, in terms of what Christy mentioned, and I love unbridled enthusiasm. You don't hear that much these days, and it's very positive. And to the junior lawyers being trained up, and I'm a father of four, so I think about education. And when we were in school, the name of the game was memorizing stuff, and you don't do that anymore because it's not about memorizing dates and historical figures. It's about figuring stuff out. How do you find a solution? How do you exercise independent judgment? And then to Christy's point, in terms of all these products out there, in terms of specific client expectations, clients are going to look to us to help understand and utilize these very specific spaces, ESG and Bitcoin, and the list goes on that Brian mentioned, and be advisors in that space. And then you get back to very high value add.
Yes, Christy, anything from your side?
Yeah, I agree with all that's been said by my fellow panelists. In terms of client expectations, for sure. The business and our clients, they expect us to be on top of the tech tools that we need to deliver legal services, and these have to be tools that help them with cost cutting. They don't like businesses from a hiring perspective. There's not that much there's not much appetite for hiring a pure technologist, but the way that the industry is developing is that lawyers need to be technologically literate, and we are expected to regularly augment our existing processes to be able to offer these downstream benefits of utilizing law tech to them without huge additional costs or onboarding burdens for the business. yeah, so law is evolving to be a multidisciplinary field where clients are expecting us to be knowledgeable on law tech, on traditional legal case delivering traditional legal advice, and also how our legal advice affects them operationally. What are the real world consequences? What technological solutions can help help them achieve their aim, and how it impacts their revenues. And to the extent I'm going to address law firms whose clients are actually in-house teams. There's an expectation from in-house teams that as the relationship progresses, law firms will require less and less hand-holding to understand the economic realities of what the in-house teams, what the client's business is, and how it interacts with the documentation.
Thank you, Christy. So actually, while our speakers are sharing, we do have questions from the floor, but I think we're somehow addressing it as to presumably the development of AI will impact upon how many and what kinds of lawyers in the future. So does our legal education require any reform in that regard? Of course, I'm happy to wait till at a later stage, but if for now you have anything to add, I see that I've heard that just now some of our panelists have already given some of their ideas as to the legal education going ahead. It's not really about just the normal figures or just the textbook knowledge, but more about independent judgments, just like David said. So anything for now on this question?
Maybe if I can very briefly touch upon that, and happy to expand if others would like me to. So I've talked, again, LITE Lab is at a law school, right? So, but we are unusual, right? So, and some may say, and I think with Gen AI, while I teach what I can it's an elective only. So should it be a capstone for all students that come through? Maybe yes, maybe no. I might have my views, but lots of my colleagues may disagree, right? Can you and should you apply Gen AI to contract law and studying contract law and criminal law? And some people are, some of the more forward-looking faculty are introducing that, but it's still not uniform. I think what I would add, especially if what kinds of lawyers and requirements and reform, what I might put forward to the audience is this. As many of you know, at least in Hong Kong, there are only 3 law schools, and ultimately, there's a legislative council that actually has a subcommittee that dictates the curriculum, the mandatory curriculum that needs to be at these 3 law schools for the qualification of lawyers. So I think that so there are only so many things that law schools can do, if you know what I mean, because there's still all the mandatory things that need to be taught, right? And so how do you squeeze it all in? So for those that do believe in this, and I've started the discussion, so with for example, with the leadership of the Law Society, but also in the Legislative Council level, if we believe that and Hong Kong, as part of the 5-year plan, Hong Kong is meant to be a global and international legal hub, right? So if we are to do that, should we introduce more of that into education? I believe we should. But to do that, frankly, we need more direction and input from the profession. We need enough of people from the profession say, yes, we want lawyer students that come out that have these skill sets. And yes, from the LegCo and the Law Society say, yes, we dictate that that should be part of the education. But otherwise, the hands are kind of tied at some of the law schools. For those that don't know, you have weirdos like myself that offer electives, and they're very popular. One of my classes has increased by 50%. Another one had a quota of 30, and I had 100 to apply. So there is demand for this, but we need more support and assistance from the profession if you believe this should be the case. Thanks.
Thanks. I think we are all agreeable to have a more balanced approach as to how we train our future generation of lawyers. Certainly, we don't want those who just can recite all the cases, the citations and everything. But at the same time, we also need them to have a solid foundation of the law and the legal analysis, how they approach the case on hand with the independent judgment, etc., etc. So going forward, there are a lot of interesting questions to ask. In fact, what I'm going to ask next one is kind of related to this first one. I would like to ask my speakers to share. In the era of certainly we are having an increasing legal tech integration. We use the word integration, in fact. Should legal professionals play a more active role on the ideation and development of digital solutions? So this time, I would like to pinpoint and invite Christy to share first, our lady on the panel.
Yeah, thanks, Corinne. Yeah, so I think what we've been talking about is a great segue into this. So in terms of revamping how the next generation of lawyers think, and even how we think now, so there's going to be increasing trend of automating off junior level tasks, right, and legal processes. So this will mean that firstly, what David mentioned, the billable hour is under pressure. And also junior level lawyers are facing pressure as well as to how to make themselves relevant to the future trend of where this industry is going. So even though the traditional traditional business model has been lawyer-led, we shouldn't be lulled into a false sense of complacency. So all it takes is for your competitor to figure out how to use some tools that will cut down on their billable hours or switch to a fixed fee model to make the other firm less competitive. So we always have to stay on top of this and change our mindset on how we're thinking about lawyering. So this is where it becomes important to develop the mindset that you're an expert producer of law tech rather than just an expert consumer. So an expert consumer refers to lawyers who are just going to be the primary users of vendor solutions. So they're responsible for implementing it in their organizations, reviewing it, maybe teaching others about the insights they glean from it, training others on how to use it. They're basically going to own the usage of the technology in their firms at best, and they're going to be responsible for troubleshooting issues with it. So most people will fall into this category, and that's fine. And also to take it further, you may see a lot of content creators on LinkedIn or Medium or Substack talking about the newest AI developments. And that's fine as well, but they're also an expert consumer. They've become an educator, and this is in itself a microeconomy in the digital age. So when I'm referring to an expert producer, I'm referring to the incorporation of tech solutions that lawyers brainstorm up during the ideation stage of the design thinking process. It sounds complicated, it's really not. So briefly, design thinking refers to a multidisciplinary method of synthesizing your knowledge and agile problem solving to create user-centric products, services, advice. So it has 5 stages as empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. So empathize is really self-explanatory. You empathize with the client's needs and you narrow down the scope of what they need. And then ideate, you are generating ideas on possible solutions using a combination of creative and analytical techniques. So it could be linear, lateral thinking, non-linear thinking, mind mapping, and it can be in combination with traditional legal advice. And then you're going to be prototyping these solutions either in a sandbox environment, so either a programming environment, or you're testing out your idea in a hypothetical real-world scenario. And at this stage, you're considering the budget of your client as well, the end user. And you're testing through the feedback of the end user and improving the prototype solution through incorporating that feedback. So at the ideation stage, after that very long explanation, sorry about that, as a expert producer, you're thinking about, do you see a law tech solution that could help the client achieve what they want to do? And is this something we can own for them? Of course, traditional legal advice can come into this as well. Can we own this for them rather than outsourcing this to an external solutions provider? If not, can our firm develop this tool or this plugin as an add-on service for our client? Or if there's already a dominant player in this field, maybe we can approach them for like a referral or like introductions fee sharing agreement, of course, in line with the professional ethics and with the client's informed consent. So this is translatable for lawyers too, and not every for in-house lawyers. And not every deal will present an opportunity for additional revenue add-on, but through this process, you can identify gaps in the market. And so in terms of legal education, and and the skills that lawyers will need in the future, this will require some tech literacy. So you have to be a consumer and a producer in order to be a producer. You have to consume developments in the field. You have to stay on top of what's happening, and you have to have some software literacy to understand like what is structuring data, unstructuring data, what is going on with these AI techniques, rather than other than just the hot button terms. But as a producer, you besides developing data and software literacy, you shouldn't get caught up with jumping on the bandwagon of any particular technology without first understanding how it can further commercial ends and the regulations surrounding it, its use. It's important to recognize your role, and your role is to understand and monitor, it's to check, and it's to challenge the relevance of technological developments in the business, the relevance of it to the business, and you are the one in your organization leading a principled approach to tech adoption.
Thank you, Christy. So I'm aware of the time, but I still would like to see David and Brian if you have further points to add on this question, because I still have one question that I really want to ask. But before we move on to the last question.
Can I just add something very quickly, because I love what Christy was saying, because as I said, I teach design thinking in my class. So actually, as part of we have another roundtable where we actually work with law firms and how they're productizing some of their tools, not just for internal but external users. But as part of my class, they actually, instead of submitting essays to me, they submit digital deliverables. So yesterday was the deadline, so it's ironic. I have four bots, one llama bot, I have 2 metaverses, and I have a variety of other kind of tools. And all these are primarily no code, low code, right? Except for the llama one, we had some computer science. So there are 10 faculties in Hong Kong. You have got 7 students from 7 faculties, so it's very interdisciplinary. The point about that is exactly what Christy was saying. How do we actually get them to actually work on real projects and to be those producers rather than just consumers? So yeah, love that. We're actually trying to put that into operation, and maybe in the next year you'll see some of what they have. One of the things I would add is, because coming from a law school, I joke that I'm admitted in 3 jurisdictions, but I have no practicing certificate, so we're not giving legal advice. So it's all legal information, and we're ensuring that we're at that borderline thing so that we're not providing the advice. Otherwise, we'll have the Law Society and others coming against us, rightfully so, because we're not, giving advice. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. David, anything to add?
No, I'm excited to hear your last question.
Good. So my last question I've been longing to hear is whether, and if so, do you think there are specific areas where you think maintaining traditional approach is essential, and whether there are specific areas where innovation is more critical? So I'm aware of the time, so maybe I invite each of our guest speakers to sum up in within 1 minute or 1 minute or 30 seconds. Why don't you start first, David? What do you think? Which areas are more traditional approaches are more essential, and what areas you think innovation is more critical?
I mean, just at a very basic level, I think relationships and trust cannot be replaced. That's something I've learned in my practice. It does come down to relationships. All the rest, to the extent you can make it quicker, better, faster, then adopt technology as much as possible.
I cannot agree more, David. But I actually have written an article, and which I did share that trust is the foundation of our legal work, because being a professional is about trust from the clients. Yes. So Brian or Christy, what do you think?
Brian, do you want to go first?
No, ladies first. I'm happy for you to go.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I would reiterate what's been said. And also, I think that we always need to look at what the business environment is when we're talking about innovating the practice of law. So right now in this environment, and plus the drying up of VC funds, whatnot, there's less incentive to adopt these really revolutionary AI techniques that are going to replace the bread and butter parts of legal practice, like extrapolating rules and then interpreting case law judgments and applying them to the facts of the situation to give commercial legal advice. And we have to remember any kind of emerging technology that aims to do that will need the blessing of the authorities in our industry. So the law firms, the chief legal officers at organizations. So the traditional approach still remains predominant, but I anticipate that once the environment stabilizes, there will be more conservative exploration in this area. And we already see some very interesting collaborations with some software platforms and these enterprises that allow them to tune and customize their own large language models and generative AI models, which I think David alluded to earlier. So I wouldn't put it past you that it will spill over in a larger scale in the legal industry in the nearby future. Yeah, so I want to address back on why it's important to structure data, because I think I didn't address it fully. So in the second wave of AI implementation, where legal data is structured, it's important because even though generative AI can run on unstructured data, structured data is easier for machines to interpret, and its clarity, factual clarity, allows generative AI to produce results that are more accurate and aligned with the user's intention. And this is really important in the legal industry where the margin for error is 0. So you can only turn law into code to perform specific tasks like execute smart contracts if you structure the legal data first. And so there needs to be a greater awareness and emphasis on the need to draft contracts and advice for machine readability. That's where the innovation starts, because the use cases for that code can then be unlimited, and that's where the exponential value can be created when you're taking an innovative approach to legal data. I'm going to stop there because time's running out.
Thank you. So Brian,
I'll keep mine short and sweet because a lot of great things have already been said. And a slight twist to what already has been said. So I think if one were to be, we talk a lot about innovation, and and I think we're all believers in that. But the good old traditional aspects that I think are core to a good lawyering is, number one, critical thinking, right? So, and I think that will be a tricky, I think, from an education point of view and from a lawyering point of view. As we use more technology, how do we have more critical thoughts in relation to what the output is, right? And then secondly, and this is, I think, David's point, empathy, right? So how do we relate to our clients such that we actually understand what their problems are, we empathize with them, and so that we can hopefully, together with critical thinking, engender their trust.
Thank you, Brian. That's very true, because machines and all the technology can help us to be more efficient, certainly. But ultimately, a client's needs need to be professionally looked after, cannot be done without the professional input of the lawyer, human lawyer himself as well, I would say. Yes, so thank you very much for all the sharing. As I see, we have some questions previously, but I think they have been very well addressed. And I'm not sure if Samantha or colleagues from Lexis have anything to say. Otherwise, my special thanks to all of the speakers, Brian, Christy, and David. So this is Corinne, and nice to meet you all online. See you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays.
Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.